In Lansing, amid the pandemic, a political back and forth now continues. The governor has asked for an extension of the state of emergency order, and today, neither the House or the Senate took any action on it. News 8 political reporter Rick Alvin joins us now from home with the latest on this. Rick?
Brian, the governor and legislature have a problem. They don't have a great track record of coming to an agreement on the big issues. Last year, the budget debacle. Now, trying to extend the state of emergency. The governor wants 28 more days. And that stems from a 1976 law that allows the governor to initially go for 28 days, but then the legislature has to approve an extension of that. They've already done that once. But the governor also has another law that's on the books from 1945 that doesn't mention governmental oversight. So the legislature had talked about extending the stay-at-home, or rather extending the Emergency Act, the declaration of emergency, till May 15th. That's when the stay-at-home order has been extended to, but they didn't do that today either. So the legislature really wants to negotiate something with the governor, and today the governor made it pretty clear that's not what she wants.
I am completely focused on saving lives. I'm not going to engage in political negotiations with anybody. We don't have time for politics and games when people's lives are on the line. I'm going to make decisions not based on negotiation, but based on facts and science and data and risk.
So this order expires tomorrow, and if the legislature doesn't do something, the governor would be acting without their consent, which means that 1945 law would be the one she would be relying upon. And it's possible, though I think the optics would be questionable at best, that the legislative and executive branch could end up in some type of a legal battle. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but it could happen. And also tomorrow, the protesters are heading back to Lansing, and it's going to be different than it was before. At least one post I saw where organizers were telling the people to get there early, park their cars, and go to the Capitol, where they're actually going to have a rally and speakers on the lawn. That would be much different than what we saw on the 15th. So tomorrow is going to be an exceptionally interesting day of demands and deadlines, Brian.
Rick, I was just looking on social media before we went to you. Mike Shirkey is really upset with the governor. Apparently doesn't like the way that she's been communicating with the news media and not talking to his committee, and he says he's done talking to her.
Well, that may be a negotiation tactic. If it is, then perhaps the two of them are having some conversations, but they're both posturing a little bit. Or that could be the absolute truth, in which case there is a concurrent resolution that's right now in the Senate that goes through all of the things that have happened with the Senate and the governor so far as it pertains to this emergency declaration. And it finally concludes that they don't think the governor gave them enough data, enough scientific fact to extend the state of emergency. And so they ask for a laundry list of things. They want to know the number of beds that are being occupied by COVID-19 patients. They want to know how many of those are critical care beds. They want to know how many people have left the hospital, how many beds are available, how many ventilators. They want all of this data, they say, and conclude by saying that they will not extend the emergency order. I have no idea if they have 20 votes in the Senate and 55 over in the House. We really don't know. We think today was a day of negotiation. They have that ready, but I don't know if they can pass it. I think today the legislature and the governor were talking, or at least their teams were talking, but apparently it did not, well, not apparently, quite obviously, it did not result in any type of action today. Tomorrow, I think, is a real deadline for this, but even at that, as I point out, the governor is, in each of her executive orders, she starts out by saying, pursuant to the 1976 law, that's the Emergency Management Act, and then the 1945 law, which is the Emergency Powers Act, which, no lawyer am I, but suggests that the underpinning for all of these EOs that she has, these executive orders that she has put out, relies on both of those. So I think that's, she most certainly is a lawyer, I think that's where she believes that she can continue this emergency order without the legislature.
And Rick, as you alluded to, if this goes to the courts, what precedent would they ever have to look back? Has anything like this ever happened, I guess, in the past that would give them a frame of reference of how to go forward?
I'm sure that there are. I mean, you know, the legislatures around the country and the governors, it's always kind of a power struggle. And that's kind of the way it's set up to be. That's the checks and balances. So I'm sure there's precedent to be had. But worse, I think, than the precedent or even what that outcome would be would just be the optics of it, like I said before. And it would pit the executive and legislative against each other at a time when the state has a lot of important work to do. So it would certainly become more chaotic, Brian.
Absolutely. All right, Rick Albin, important to check in with you on a busy day in Lansing. We will be back there tomorrow. Rick, thank you for that.